We're off to Fratton Park, where there's been a red card, but for who, Chris Kamara?
I don't know, Jeff. I saw him walk off and
Have you not been watching? I haven't.
it looked like he was going to another episode of Save Your Saves. He's had a terrible time on Football Manager. He'd been telling me about that before the match, and his 4-2-3-1 gegenpress hadn't been working as well. His finances have really been terrible. But hopefully he can get saved. You know, Zealand, he's got those magic fingers.
Get your fingers out.
That's not what I meant, Jeff. That's not what I meant.
Cutting edge report.
On this episode of Save Your Saves, Zealand bears it all and does 5, not 4 saves in the most dramatic, intense episode of SYS ever. Oh yeah. I want you to know that wasn't actually in slow mo. First, we have Goose Yourself, who's managing Modena. There is no world where that's the We just won the promotion playoff from Serie B for the second time, as we are immediately relegated the first time out. I feel you, brother. I feel like the tactic's solid and we have a lot of good young players, but what can I do to keep us in the top flight in Italy? So, congratulations on your second promotion. Just want to make sure that this all happens. So you made it up through the playoff, boom, back down. Then you finished third, got up through the playoff again. And when you went back down, you actually finished 18th. To be honest, that's pretty good. For those that aren't familiar with Serie A, which, who are you? That is the best relegation spot. So it's not like you were just blasted back down. Obviously, I don't know the points, but there was a pretty good effort. You know the first thing I'm going to do. I know the first thing I'm going to do. We're going to go to the analyst report and we're going to go to comparison. And we're just going to take a look at like how your players stack up against the league. And while this is definitely below average, that's pretty bad. It's definitely below average. Like, this isn't terrible. You know what I mean? The defense is pretty bad, but this isn't like the worst I've seen much worse than this and be able to stay in the league. So it's definitely not your attributes alone that are causing issues. I see. You're pretty good. You're pretty good at the game. This is a tactic I came up with early in FM21 myself. I stumbled upon this. The old 4-3-3 angled, but instead of having a defensive midfielder, you've got the advanced winger and everything else. The issue with this, especially with midfield roles that you have on right now, is it's really offensive, right? I mean, you have an advanced playmaker who's essentially the most defensive person outside of your back four. That's a really significant problem. I'm guessing you don't use this tactic against teams that, like, you don't use this tactic against Juventus. You probably roll out this one. This is a very scared, terrified tactic. The lower line and standard engagement, I don't understand the logic behind that. There might be logic behind that. Look, I know I have a gigantic head. I mean, you can just see the Harry Kane resemblance. I have some questions for my father. But in this giant head of mine, I don't have a logic for doing this kind of staggering when you don't have somebody between the midfield line and the defensive line, especially you do this kind of staggering and you're doing it in the deeper half of the field. I think that could be a real problem. You're giving them a lot of space here. You're preventing your midfield from being able to recover all the way back down, at least as readily. And you're using that standard. It's not like you're meeting them way up the field, right? You're meeting them at a decent line, but if they get people between the lines, right? If you're playing a 4-2-3-1, you have 3 dudes here that are between the line. They can receive the ball. They can run at the defense. They can pass. They can run off. If you're playing a 4-2-3-1, you've got 4 guys against 4 defenders. Once they get in behind your midfield, and they will, you've got 4 guys against your 4 defenders. And that will happen to you a couple times a game, especially if you're going in quicker transition because you're setting your line of engagement higher. That's something that definitely bothers me here. Another thing that's like, I know this is your incredibly defensive tactic. Never start with whenever possible. That is taking the ball to the corner flag and like actively trying not to score. Okay, frequently is fine. You turn on a little time wasting, your goalkeeper takes a while, you take a while on corners and set pieces and everything, and you play for set pieces. Like, that's smart. Like, you clearly have a grasp of most of the things you should be doing. More disciplined is good. Early crosses, if you feel like you've got the personnel for it, that's fine. Low crosses is the same thing. That's personnel specific. It's not just like a defensive minded thing, but we'll leave that be for now, because time wasting whenever possible, that is like the nuclear option in stoppage time of the World Cup final. When I was in the 3rd division in Portugal, I wasn't playing a tactic nearly that defensive against Porto in the cup, and we lost 3-1. We played a solid game at the time, and that's because we were really good. Up the ODFC. If you want to watch the streams, they're linked down in the description. There's also a live YouTube channel where you can watch episodes of each stream. So if you want to catch up, you don't want to just jump in, you can do that, or you just hate Twitch. That's understandable, but it is fun. I mean, look, we do stuff like this. Another counter. Oh, let's go. Let's go, Armando. On your horse again. He's around him again. I mean, it's like deja vu. That's literally because I'm watching the same highlight. What? I think your team building is on the right track. Obviously, you've picked up a lot of guys that look like they have a lot of potential, and a couple of these guys look like they're good enough now. You know, you've got a 17-year-old striker with pace that can put the ball in the back of the net. Like, you've done a good job building this team. I think you have to be careful. You have a very offensive tactic and a very defensive tactic. If you are using either of those a lot, you're going to want to bring that down. You're going to want to find something that can be a little more in the middle and create chances while not being like the French front line in World War II. History jokes with Zealand. Yeah. This is a history disclaimer that the Maginot Line was very intimidating and that the big issue for the French tactically was they did not think that they were going to bring the tank. I would say don't panic. You're probably doing okay. Just be sure to work these young guys into the game and be sure to play into the strengths of somebody like Vasco Teixeira, who is an off-ball goal-scoring merchant, essentially. Yeah, your tactics are tilted too far one direction or the other, as long as you're not using the first one, which is fine. What was your first tactic? It's called One Direction. Tastes like strawberries on a summer. Harry Styles is in One Direction, right? Next, it's Terra X with Colchester. I am very new to the game and support Colchester in real life. Gone into the championship in my third season, promoted 2 times in a row, and think I'm going in heavily unprepared. Okay, so you promoted 2 times in a row. You're in the championship. I just got lucky to win against Notts Forest. That's 2 different teams. I would like to continue the momentum into the next game. Wondering if you have any tips on how to carry on a good run and stay out of the relegation zone. Ah, yes. Okay, so you are 6 matches, 6 points, big win against Nottingham Forest, and that's got you on your way. Honestly, looking at this off the top, I think that you've played just back-to-back clean sheeted a couple of teams. I mean, did you deserve this? Are you beating yourself up unnecessarily? Back-to-back promotions, you might have the momentum, you might be feeling it. You were right that you were a little lucky to win, but you put yourself in a position where you could win 2-0, right? You found, let me look at the chance distribution here. Got our XG. What about chances? You were the only team that had at least a half chance in the game. So, I mean, you were creating at least better, higher quality chances that you were able to score, even if you didn't accumulate XG from bombing it away from everywhere. It's a good win. I'm imagining we're going to have a pretty scary looking comparison though. Anytime you're double promoted, it's usually, yeah, your team is not fantastic. What you have to use is this, right? Because a lot of teams in the championship don't have this. Play a nice organized setup. This is a good organized setup that can help keep the opponents in front of you. You've got help for your defense with a defensive midfielder. You've got one of your fullbacks staying back. It's not like a dynamite offensive setup, but it's definitely a formation that's great. You don't have a third formation created that you can be training, which is sacrilegious. How dare you? But if you want to figure out how to capitalize on this, on the good run that you're on, back-to-back promotions, you need to praise the bejesus out of your team. You, I, and everybody else know that Colchester in this version right now is not good enough to get promoted. And the best you can do, what is the board expectation? Fight bravely against relegation? Yep. Anytime you achieve anything, praise the Holy Spirit out of your team. Like the team meetings, before and during matches, that if you're level at halftime with a team in the top half of the league, boys, you're doing great. This, of course, unless you gave up like 3 XG and a half, then you probably need to yell at them. The vast majority of the time, you need to be praising the bejesus out of your players, out of your team, in every chance that you have, so that you are getting the best out of your locker room atmosphere, because that is what is going to be able to carry you above these teams that start to fall apart because they are not full of optimists. Your team is full of optimists. In terms of how to get the quality of your team up to the next level, you have a couple days left in the transfer window. Loans, then you've reached a point where you might be able to sign a Wonderkid or 2 because your finances, you might be able to sell a player for actual money. And at that point, you can start buying like one South American. He's my beautiful South American boy. Next, we have Sub is Cool, who's managing Vaduz in Switzerland, or in Liechtenstein, which, if you didn't know, is right here on a map. Reese, take us. right here. I feel like we're performing way above expectations, and the team really needs some help improving talent-wise. A lot of my players have pre-concerns on whether or not they want to move to a bigger club. Since Vaduz is a Liechtensteiner team, we can't qualify for the Champions League through the Swiss Super League, so I can't build up our reputation quick enough. So I don't know if you've done this intentionally, but Vaduz is actually a challenge team. I have no idea and have no ability to investigate this at the moment. But Vaduz being in Liechtenstein means they play the Liechtenstein Cup, which means if you win the Liechtenstein Cup, which you should every year, you get into the Europa League. In order to get into the Champions League, you have to win the Europa League and then play in the Champions League that next year. In order to stay in the Champions League, you have to win it, which means you can only be in the Champions League every other year. That is called the Vaduz Challenge, because in the Swiss Super League, you can't qualify for European positions for some reason out of the Swiss Super League. I don't know if that's the case in real life, but it is the case in FM. You have either intentionally or accidentally picked a really, really intense, serious challenge. Let's take a look at the happiness, right? Because we've got some serious pre-concerns about maybe wanting to leave, start looking to move to a bigger club, start looking to, so like all of these guys. So fortunately, it's just all of your really influential players and none of the players that aren't influential in the locker room. I want to say that you're fine, but you're just not. This guy's name really Nico Hug. That is awesome. What a nice guy. All right, the way to get around this, if you really want to keep people on your team, is to get them signed on to long contracts, right? So pre-concerns, one, don't actually block you from signing new contracts. If you have anybody that you are worried about leaving, and this is the tip we're going to take from this save, you need to sign players and keep them under long contracts. So like Rico Christian should be under contract. I mean, if you are worried about people leaving, this dude should get a new contract every single year, pushing out the end date of his contract as far out as it's allowed, which is like 5 years in FM. So just in case Real Madrid shows up and they're like, como se dice $100 million. Honestly, you'd probably take that deal. But if you didn't want to take it, or they were offering you $3 million for a player that's key to your team and he's like, I want to leave, just offer him more money and say, hey, what would it take you to stay? Then they'll turn you down and you'll be like, okay. And then eventually, as long as you don't make any promises, that team will become no longer interested at some point in the next like year or two. And then you'll be able to offer him a new contract and that player will still be on your team. That's the secret sauce. Extend this guy. This dude is 6'6", it's 17. He's playing the wrong sport. LeBron James would like a word, but just in case he doesn't, extend this guy's contract. LeBron gets a hold of it, it'll be millions of dollars. You don't want that to happen. Next, we have Watson J.A. at Aston Villa. Since I started the save, I have gradually been improving over the seasons. After 5 seasons, I managed a second place finish comfortably. Spelled in an uncomfortable way. You've been rising and now you find yourself not rising. And what do we do about that? How do we stem the tide of the fall? And your team is improving. You have a good young core, left back, right back, defensive midfielder, center back, goalkeeper. Where are the young hot shots in every other direction though? The second place finish might have been the fluke here, right? This wasn't actually consistent improvement. 12th, 6th, 8th, 7th. And then second, right? The woo, leap up. Yeah, this is where your team is. And unless you made some giant change, right? That jump up was a bit more of a statistical anomaly. Now, a huge shout out to Baldvin Oscarsson, who is a wow alert. Maybe the best Wonderkid I've ever seen from Iceland. I absolutely love Baldvin Oscarsson, and hopefully he can lead Iceland to glory because this dude's nuts. Right, he's cracked. You need more dudes that can become that. It looks like your team honestly is really good. I'm curious to see the report here. Yeah, your team, look, your team is really good, but I would say somewhere around 5th in the league is where you are. 4th or 5th in the league is where you're supposed to be. Because while that Baldvin Oscarsson guy is great, he's also coming in at 4.5 stars in your team, which means obviously the vast majority of your team is not going to be of that type of quality. But when you go to someone like Man City, I mean, who you're competing against trying to win a league like this, everybody in the starting lineup is going to have what would be on your team probably like 3.5 to 4-star quality based off what I've just seen. There's no team in the world that has 11 Baldvin Oscarssons at every position, right? But they have, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 Baldvin Oscarssons, and I don't think you've got the ammunition to compete with that. So you need to use the money that I'm sure you've gotten. I mean, financially, you're rich. You use the money you've gotten, Continue to wire the world if you haven't already. And you just need to keep signing great young players. You've got like one kind of core at the back half of your team. You need to be taking flyers on great young players from all over the place. If you have the opportunity, buy somebody for 35 to 40 million that's actually a world-class player from a top 5 league that's trying to get out of there. You can get that kind of value. You've reached the peak of like team building. You have the ammunition. You've managed your team wonderfully to get a second place finish with Aston Villa. You've got a good core of players. Now it's time to take your team building to the next level if you really want to be consistently challenging for the top of the league. Do I think your team has the quality to win a league right now? Yeah, but consistently being up there and reliably being up there, it's just not going to happen. Remember, you don't have to have the overlaps on for them to play the overlaps. Just something to keep in mind. The overlaps will happen anyways. And playing direct when you're a really high quality team can be weird, but higher and much higher. There's no real issue with your tactic. Maybe too many people on an attacking role for positive. Take one of the fullbacks off or take one of the inside forwards off, because then you end up with a more balanced front line, because you'll have your fullbacks are on attack, your inside forwards are on support, your advanced forwards there, your Metsala and inside forward are also probably going to be running into each other. I've used that before, but it can get crowded. Those are all my thoughts on your tactic. But I think this comes down to team building for success. Find a couple more Baldvin Oscarsons, and you're going to be winning a lot of leagues, not just one. Next! Thirda. I'm managing Elgin City, Elgin Baylor, Basketball Hall of Famer, look him up. On my way to the second season, pretty much going well with my 2 strikers going ham. Is my tactic too offensive for this kind of team, or maybe too defensive? I'm still don't have enough understanding of tactics. Thank you so much, Z. Thanks for streaming the videos. You got it. Let's take a look. Okay, so we are in where? Scottish League 1. So the level of play is going to be pretty freaking low. I have very little issue with this. I do think that your fullbacks are very unlikely to be able to play wingback. This guy has 2 crossing and 4. Why do you need this guy anywhere up the field? You know, so is it too offensive in that sense? Yeah, I feel like you should just go fullbacks here. I mean, this White guy, Joe White, is certainly better than the other guy, and so maybe you want him on wingback, but wingbacks take people on. They go off the dribble. They take people on. I might just put these guys on fullback and just have this kind of defensive setup. But what I typically do when I am in lower leagues is my team will look like this. And I'm playing a more direct, higher tempo. You're a man after my own heart with like no instructions in here. I appreciate that. And you're in such a low league. The teamwork is low. The intelligence is low. They're not going to be listening to you nearly as much as they normally would anyways. I think the standard lines are fine. I wouldn't have an issue with something like that, or at least something like this, in order to get that line of engagement so high that when you're playing the ball up there, you're able to make something happen. But yeah, you basically have, when we're chilling here, you have the team defensively that we would have had before. Do you really have a ball? Yeah, I guess this guy's definitely a ball playing defender at this level. But in turn, is this too offensive? No, right? You have kind of the same idea in all 3. No, this is not too offensive. Trust your instincts. You're on to something here. The advanced on the outside, deep ball to the 2 strikers. Play with 2 strikers. If you're in lower leagues, play with freaking 2 strikers, because you put 2 against 2 on the center backs, somebody's going to break open, somebody's going to score a goal. If you have a deep set midfield, you're keeping them from doing the same thing. They can't play out of the middle. They got to go out wide, and who has the quality to do that, right? And you have players coming up the outside to provide numbers in the attack. You get the numbers on the outside of your team. Don't be afraid to do something like that just to bring these guys into the middle a little more. But if you want to stretch, you feel like you're getting good runs in the channels, then you want to take this wider, and the defenders will go out and track farther into the wings. There's nothing wrong with this tactic. It's not too offensive. The only issue I'd see would be take on the fullbacks. I think take them from wingback to fullback, because when you look at what a wingback does, right, run wide with the ball and get further forward, just go to fullback on support. They're just in that spot. They can get further forward if they want to, right? But here you're telling them to get the ball and run wide with it, right? The other guy's got, like, he can't dribble. Right, this guy on the right, Hardy, you can't do that. People get afraid of fullbacks because you want to have a wingback that's out there playing like a wingback. Most guys can't do that, and that's fine. How often have you scored because White or Hardy got up into an advanced position and put a deadly ball into somebody, or swung it back to the middle for an easy finish? Probably not a lot. But that was a nice, wholesome one there to wrap things up. That was nice and wholesome. Congratulations. You're not as bad as you thought. You're on the right track. Probably watched a lot of Zealand videos, you know what I'm saying? Hey! I'll see you in another video. Another save your save. Remember, join the Discord, join the subsection of the Discord to submit your saves to be saved. People always ask me how to do that. That's how. You have to sub on Twitch in order to get into the subsection of the Discord. But the last time we opened it up to everybody, the sheet was, you know, we want to be able to get to this stuff. Sign this guy also. What? This guy, sign him. He looks miles better than anyone else you have on your team, and he's actually balanced. Hopefully you can afford him.